Trey, is there a best time to negotiate what the deal means to you? Like if you think about the spectrum of a deal life cycle, at what point should the CFO be having that conversation if they were to maximize leverage?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because in one way you get options and those are supposed to award you on the exit, and so I can see a lot of CEOs saying, hey, like this is what the options are for, like this is part of your job description. And if you went too early to try to get more money for yourself in a deal, like just being like, no, this is too early. I do because I see, like in my experience, CEOs tend to do a good job of taking care of people who kind of slaved away on deals. I do see kind of towards the end of the process, people getting like large awards quite frequently. But if you wait towards the end, you don't, like, this is kind of at the generosity of the board and of the CEO. And so you don't necessarily have like the holdup value at that point. So, I mean, like, I don't think, your CFO should be maybe, holding kind of companies hostage right before sales processes. Like if you're underpaid and you know that your options aren't going to accelerate, like, yeah, have that conversation. But what I think would mostly happen is your CEO is going to tell you like, no, you're already overcompensated.
Yeah.
Or they're going to say, I'll take care of you. And then you kind of have to say, do you trust them or not to do something like accelerate your equity?
Yeah. Because the CFO has a fiduciary responsibility to get the deal done. And then on a personal level, they're also like, well, I want to make sure that if I get canned after this and I don't have like a double trigger, I'm not going to get accelerated. I do have enough to take me to the next chapter in my life.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it can be tricky. And again, like another thing, like your lawyer, right? Like if I'm the company's lawyer, like I'm not the CFO's lawyer or not even the CEO's lawyer, but I'm the company's lawyer. And so, I would say most of the time, if you're the CFO, you're not engaging your own counsel. But if it's so much money at stake, feel free to, I would say a lot of times CEOs too and companies would be annoyed if kind of that next tier employee kind of starts holding up the deal. You want people that are going to kind of get the deal over the line. But if it's enough money at stake, like you should always feel comfortable like calling up someone who actually represents you and talking about what it means for you, particularly if you don't know if you're going to be fired or not post deal, and compensation is tied to post deal activities.
Yeah. I have to thank you because you were very helpful to me. I could call you up and, hey, man, can you just explain what this means to me? Like I need to understand as a CFO, but I also need to understand like what happens to me after in this. But to your point, it sounds like it is okay at some points to hire your own counsel.
Yeah, and I think even in deals, you have company counsel, but like, what is a company? Like, there are investors, there's management, there's employees, right? And like, there is kind of no single person as a company. So as companies counsel, like you end up giving advice to stockholders, to management, and that's common. But I think that only is an issue where there's a huge disconnect between what the quote unquote company wants and what an individual stockholder wants, or what a management person wants. So it could be the case that like company counsel can be helpful to employees, but particularly if there's a disconnect where like the CEO doesn't want to pay you more, or you're being fired and everyone else isn't, or even sometimes in deals the stockholders and the CEO and the board or the stockholders and management are opposed to each other, where the stockholders don't think they're getting paid enough and management doesn't think they're getting paid enough. And so in those situations, you do see sometimes like individual players within the company get their own counsel, why like company counsel kind of help quarterbacks everyone's input.
Because there are certain games to be played. Sometimes as a CFO, you actually don't want to go on to the next company because maybe it's a bigger one and you say, listen, I'm a startup person by nature. I want to take my chips off the table here and go play another game. After there's a successful exit, I'll make sure it gets through. But then if you're the CEO, you may have an earnout where you're going to have to stay for 2 years. And you should also be thinking about, well, what's my new salary going to be? You may get a raise. You may actually get less money than before because they're going to benchmark you against now like a GM within their company after you're acquired.
Yeah, that's right. And you're the CEO too. You may be tired and you may even have an earnout that might be small, but you made enough money that you actually don't want to stay. And so you have to act like, sometimes, and I think buyers, like when I represent buyers, we're always thinking about like, how do we ensure that the incentive package like actually makes people want to stay, and how do we ensure that this transaction is going to be successful? And buyers are always thinking about that. But I mean, sometimes CEOs they want to get out too. And because, and maybe something else to add, like non-competes, we haven't talked about that yet, but different buyers have different views of like what group of people should sign non-competes. And it's, you know, if a CEO, founder, it's very common for them to sign a 3 to 5 year non-compete.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.